Hi everyone! In this video, I'm going to be going over some Kikopup tips to teach your dog to back up. So what is extremely important is you want to be using a non-slip surface to work on this exercise. You also want to be trying to get your dog to back up in a nice straight line, moving symmetrically. So you don't want to see your dog lifting one leg higher than the other or bunny hopping backwards like that. You might have seen in my previous videos, when training dogs, I'm luring them with treats in both hands. And the reason behind this is so I can get a very symmetrical movement. Because if you have treats in one hand, for example, when training back up, and you try to move the dog backwards, they can get a little bit off to the side in different directions. So by having treats in both hands and the dog doesn't know which hand they're going to get the treat from, not only is it going to make them stop being hyper-fixated on the treat in one hand, but you're going to get a nice symmetrical movement backwards. So if I see his butt starting to angle to this side, I can feed over here, and if I see the butt starting to angle to that side, I can feed him over here to straighten him up. So he's not knowing which hand the treats are coming out of. Good! And I can mark that beautiful movement backwards. So if your dog is sitting, as you move the treats back like that, instead of holding them high up, at first you can just begin low down and mark, good, just a stutter step backwards like that. Good. And you're going to feed, good, out of either hand. So whatever hand the dog thinks you're going to give them the treat, if they're nice and straight, you give them the treat out of the other one. Good. And what you're looking for is marking them for not messing with your hands at all. Good, like that. And then when they're backing up nice and straight and they're not sitting, then you can start holding the treats higher up. Good. Good. If you're wanting to teach your dog to back up in the heel position, beginning with your dog between your legs with treats on either side like this, good. And getting that nice straightness before then asking for heel work on your left or your right side is going to make it so much easier for them to understand the concept of keeping their body straight because they've practiced and rehearsed moving beautifully straight backwards. Now I'm going to go over some tips for getting your dog to offer backing up on just a verbal cue without any hand signals or luring, as well as backing up to a distance. Now remember, depending on your dog's conformation and fitness, it depends on how easy it's going to be for them to back up and how far they can go. So if you see your dog starting to struggle, that usually means that they're having a hard time. Are you ready? So you might want to contact a physical therapist if your dog is really struggling. So the first tip is using a target for the back feet. Now it's important that if the target is very high, where the dog is starting to take a step onto it, use it very briefly and quickly go down to a short, something that's much less tall, because otherwise your backing up is going to start to have your dog doing weird things with their back feet, which is not what we're looking for. We're looking for the weight shifting back onto the back feet as the dog's walking backwards. So a carpet, if you're on grass, I like to use fake grass so they can really feel the difference. So they're feeling the difference rather than having to step up onto something. Or if you want to use something that's higher, just have a ramp. So the dog begins low and then they go up the ramp rather than lifting their feet high to find whatever it is. Also, for some dogs, it can be really punishing if they walk backwards and they don't know where the object is, and especially if it's hard and then they hit their back foot into something hard. So this method I learned from the work of British dog trainer Laurence, who's one of my favorite trainers, and her technique for getting the initial offering is that you put a treat underneath a chair just far enough that the dog isn't going to go through the chair in order to get back out again. So you don't want the dog to go through and come around. You want the dog to back up in order to see the treats again. So I'm going to put the treat down here and I'm going to mark any steps backwards and then feed in the direction the dog is going. Are you ready? So I can say get it, and then just after she's done eating the treat, that is when you add the new cue, back up, after they've had a little bit of practice. So I'm going to say back up, good, and then feed her further back. Laurence uses a chair, but you can also use this method to teach your dog to offer backing up using a disappearing treat. So I've got treats in both of my hands, and I'm going to lure them backwards like this. Good. And the moment that he thinks to step backwards to find where the treat's gone, I'm going to mark and feed behind me. Then I'm going to lure him through again and then move my hands back. And when he takes a step back to find where the treats went, good. I'm going to mark and reinforce. I can also show him through my legs like this. Good, like that. And then eventually, I'm just going to make the gesture bigger. So my hands are going to start out here. Good. And then I can start to add a verbal cue once the dog has already learned the behavior and is offering lots of steps backwards before getting the treat. Ready? Back up. Good. And you can do the same from here. Ready? Back up. Good. So this is a tip from Bob Bailey. You're marking, good, the movement and feeding in the direction the dog's going. So I marked here, and then I fed him here. Ready? Get it? Back up. Good. So just after he's finished eating the treat over here is when I'm going to add my cue. Back up. Good. And then feed over here. Get it? To initially train your dog to offer targeting their back feet to a mat or a small raised platform, you can initially lure the behavior like that, or you can put the mat just in front of the chair that they're backing out from. Ready? Get it? Good. You can use barriers to help the dog stay straight, but if the dog is concerned about being near the barriers, I don't suggest you should use them because they might be being stressed by bumping into the barriers. So with little dogs and puppies, sometimes I'll use my legs like this as a barrier for them to back up straight, and also visually to see how to back up to the mat because my legs are pointing in that direction. So first I start out right near the mat like this, and then I move further away. Get it? Good. 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 Awesome. Back up. Well done. Get it? So I'm giving her the treat there, and then I'm aiming further away, marking and throwing the treat at her. My visual cue for back up is pretending to aim into the distance to throw the treat into the dog's mouth like that, or a frisbee. And then the eventual cue is this gesture. Are you ready? So watch as I aim behind him, he's going to back up quite a lot. And he finds it easier to catch treats underhand. But he knows throwing, so you can see he's lining up because I'm looking further back, he's going back further because I'm aiming further. And the same with if you're using a frisbee. So if I'm doing this right here, you can see he's not backing up. But if I look behind him, that makes him go way further